Greetings everybody, Amar here, and this video is in response to a question that I got from Brandy regarding odd-even bias. Now she said she noticed a bias, but in the last 10, but I'm looking at the data here, and I'm not really seeing a bias. I'm not sure what she saw. Now, keep in mind, I never really used this chart. I only looked at this chart recently for my game yesterday, and it takes a little bit of time to get used to it. Um, so Brandy, I'm curious, did you see the bias in the Advantage Gold or in the Advantage Plus? Because I remember a while back, another player from New York told me that they had seen a bias using Advantage Plus, and at that time my flash drive was working. Unfortunately, I hit it and it crapped out, so I have to see about getting another one. So all I have is gold right now. But I had noticed that the bias for the odd and even, and the bias, actually no, for her, I'm not sure if it was, well, it was either an odd even or it was low high. But I had noticed that the bias for Advantage Plus and the bias for Advantage Gold were not matching. So I'm not sure, because according to this there's no bias, right? Now this was 3 days ago you asked this question, so here this was none. Um, so I'm not sure. Now I did an update in Excel to try to answer your question, and it looks like the four odd, no, I'm sorry, it looks like the four even, one odd occurred um, the way you had predicted. So you didn't get the 5 evens. So I'm hoping to maybe do that later in a separate video showing the juxtaposition between the information in gold and then looking at it differently in Excel. Now, one thing that I do know you can do with the bias, so this is the last 10 bias, and when you put the cursor on here, it has a blue pop-up. It says that this shows the 10 drawing bias, if any. When more odd numbers than normal are in this bias group, it shows the bias as too odd, for example. Too many high numbers would be shown too even. Now, the reason why I stopped looking at this chart in Vantage Plus is because there almost was never a bias. Like over here, you can see here was a bias of 8 odds, and this was back on January 15th. So it had 8 more odd numbers than normal. So then you will be looking for evens. And then the next drawing, you had 5 evens. Now, you look at the draw bias history. So 8 odds, if you look at the draw bias history here, 8 odds is over here. So it only happened 23 times. So that would have been a good idea to come back as even. So I don't know if that's what you were seeing at that time, or you were still waiting for the evens to come in, but that was a high bias. So if you go back to the odd even bias tracker and click on it, all right. So that was so then you had 5 evens here, and then you had finally 4 evens here and 4 evens over here. Now, one thing that I have done is if you click on this L10 bias here, it allows you to change the default bias. So this is 10 drawings. So let's look at, let's say, 50 drawings and see if this 8 odds on the 15th changes. So if I hit OK, there's no bias on the 15th. If you look at it, looking at the last 50 draws. So over here at this point, there was 3 odds at the bias 3 drawings ago, and if you look at the draw bias history, 3 odds is over here. So it happens 284 times. So I'm not sure what bias that you were seeing. I do see the 8 if we go back to the last 10. Now let's say you change this here to 230 and hit OK. What's happening on the 15th? You had +4, and now here you have again 8 odds. And then you had 3 odds, and then finally you had 4 odds. So it took about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drawings to go from a 8 odd bias to a 4evens bias. Now, the evens, looking in Excel, you can't see it here, unfortunately. I'll have to do another video. There's 4 dormant periods for 4evens. So it is stronger to go. I would say it's stronger to go 4evens than and 1 odds, because 5 odds is pretty rare. Now I hope to make some additional charts, because I don't look at really the odd even so much. I look at 2 last digit evens or 2 last digit odds. That's what I do, and I try to do it. But it becomes hard because there's so many things to look at. But if you are using gold, that's one thing you could do. You could change the bias and see if things change. Because here the 8 odd bias was on the 15th, and then the 8 odd bias moved down here to the 23rd. So maybe that would be an indication that it was coming in, or maybe you could do the 2 biases simultaneously to see. It's hard to say, but obviously the 4evens occurred. So I'm going to change the bias back to 10 and hit OK. And so here you can see again the 8 was over here. But I guess so, yeah. So I guess it's good to know the maximums in the bias history. So that would have been something, yeah. So I could see there that the bias was up on the 15th. So obviously, I'm assuming that you were waiting, you were looking for that, but it occurred what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 drawings to get to the 4evens. So yeah, I don't know. I did notice that you did have a pretty large jackpot. It's like, was it 167,000 or was it 467,000? I'm not sure. I don't remember. Anyway, I'm gonna do a look in Excel, and I'm gonna take these snippings out and see if I could, because that's one thing that I have to get more into the habit of, is taking the hard percentages that are in Advantage Gold and then translating them pictographically into flag formations and dormant periods in Excel. So I appreciate the question. Good luck on your next draw. And I'm gonna try to make some macros for my game, because it's interesting. My Pennsylvania game also is a 5 of 43, so some of the patterns are very similar, or should be similar anyway. So if I can write a macro for my game, and then I could run the macro for the North Carolina, and then give you a custom chart that gives you a bigger bird's eye view of what to expect, especially let's say 4evens, like how many times does 4evens occur in a year, how many times does 4 odds occur in a year, because I do it more on count than on percentages. So yeah, I don't know if this video helped, but I do see the bias here of the 8 odds all the way up here. Now if we go back in history, you can see no bias. Here was 5evens. None. So here's another 8 odd. So if we look and see the 8 odd, so 8 odds back to back. So you would expect a 4evens and a 5evens. So here you got a 4evens that came pretty quickly, but no 5evens. When did the 5evens occur? Here's another 4evens or 4evens. So logically, you would say you would want to do the 4evens instead of the 5evens, because 5evens is very rare. But I do know of one woman who did hit a jackpot on an all-even drawing, but it was a power number drawing. It was a power number, one power number, and she said she used mostly intuition on it. It was like she had a 5 odd drawing came in, and then she had the whim to do a 5 even the next draw, and she got the power number and all the evens, and so she did hit a jackpot. That's like around 2000, and she hasn't been able to reproduce it. So The odd evens is a hard one to reproduce, but um, it makes me want to build that extra chart. I have to build a lot of custom charts for my game. I've built about 50% of them because it's hard to keep the motivation going. And basically, for me, the motivation is getting to the store. And in the winter, it's hard because I'm on bike and the snow, the roads are snowy. And I've been doing multi draws. So I think I have 4 draws left. Not a multi draw, but I'm trying to like douse the future. It's really difficult anyway. Um, so yeah, again, thanks for the question, and yeah, let me know in the comments if it was A plus or A gold, because I'm curious what you use for the bias. But obviously the bias is there, and if I scroll back down to recent, I can see the bias here. So your question came around here. So at this time it said no bias. So I'm assuming that you were carrying over this bias. Oh wait, you had a 5 evens right here. Came right after the 8 odds. Did I mention that before? I'm not sure. Maybe I did. Yeah, the 5 evens. So after the 8 odds came 5 evens right on the next draw. So if you had gotten a power number, let's say you played the 42 to repeat as your power number, and then the rest all evens, perhaps you could have jackpot. That would have been tough. Her jackpot, it was an adjacent. I remember because I analyzed it, looking at it, and it was the one had come out, and she used the 2 as an adjacent power number, and she got all the other numbers. And the other thing I noticed is that a lot of the numbers that came in were the 4th hit in the streak. So the 4th hit in the streak for any particular number is a sweet spot, which I look at, and that's what I'll probably look at when I do the Excel workout. Because I'm going to do that because to do the multi draw, I made a if you're interested, maybe you're not interested. This is probably boring at this point, but so I made a hybrid with the drawing since hit chart, and then I did a count of hits in the last 720 games, 360. Then I threw in some of pairs, and then I threw in some quads and triads, and then I tried to predict. So I may do that right now. All right. Anyway, good luck with your game, and happy number hunting.